The sound of breaking glass echoed through the suburban Denver home as Miranda Chen threw her wedding ring across the kitchen, watching it skitter under the refrigerator like a discarded promise. Her hands shook as she stared at the photos spread across the granite countertop, images that would destroy everything she'd built over the past 8 years, but which she could no longer pretend didn't exist. "Miranda, what the hell is wrong? With you?" Her husband James stood in the doorway, his tie loosened after another late night at the law firm, his expression a mixture of confusion and irritation that she'd come to know so well. "Ask me that question again after you look at these," she said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos in her chest. James approached the counter cautiously, his politician's instincts already calculating damage control before he'd even seen what had upset his wife. At 35, he'd perfected the art of managing crises, whether in the courtroom or the Colorado State Senate, where he'd been serving for the past 4 years with his eye on the governor's mansion. The first photo showed a young Asian woman, barely 18, sitting on a hotel room bed with tears streaming down her face. The second showed the same woman, but this time she was cowering in the corner of what appeared to be a storage room, her clothes torn and her face bruised. "Jesus Christ, Miranda, what is this, some kind of sick joke?" "That's my sister, James, that's Lily." The color drained from James's face as he recognized the girl in the photos. Lily Chen, Miranda's younger sister, who'd been living with them for the past year while finishing her senior year of high school. The quiet, studious girl who'd barely spoken to him since moving in, who'd seemed to shrink into herself whenever he entered a room. "I don't understand. Where did you get these?" "From Lily herself. She's been documenting what you've been doing to her for months, James. She's been too scared to tell me, but she's been building a case against you." Miranda watched her husband's face cycle through emotions, confusion, denial, calculation, and finally, a cold fury that made her step back instinctively. "You can't possibly believe I would ever hurt Lily. She's practically my daughter. She's 18 years old and you've been raping her since she turned 17. Don't you dare try to gaslight me about this." The photos told a story that Miranda had been too blind to see, despite the signs that had been there for months. Lily's grades dropping, her withdrawal from family activities, the way she flinched when James touched her shoulder or tried to hug her. Miranda had attributed it to typical teenage adjustment issues, to the stress of living with relatives instead of their parents back in San Francisco. "Miranda, listen to me. Lily is troubled. She's been having problems since she moved here. Acting out, making up stories for attention. You know she's been seeing that therapist. Dr. Reeves said she has issues with authority figures, especially men. Dr. Reeves said that because you told him to say that. You've been setting this up for months, James, making everyone think Lily was unstable, so that if she ever tried to tell the truth, no one would believe her." Miranda had discovered the truth by accident, finding Lily's hidden camera in the living room bookshelf where she'd been recording their family interactions. Initially, Miranda had been angry about the privacy violation, but when she'd watched the footage, she'd seen something that had made her physically sick. James, coming home from late Senate sessions, checking to make sure Miranda was asleep, then going to Lily's room. The first few recordings showed him simply standing in her doorway, watching her sleep. Then the visits became longer, more intrusive. The camera had captured him touching Lily while she pretended to sleep. Then later, when she was awake and clearly terrified, forcing himself on her while threatening to have her deported if she told anyone. "Lily doesn't have legal status, James. She's here on a student visa that you helped arrange. You've been using that against her, telling her that one word from you could get her sent back to China, could ruin her chances of getting into college here. That's not... Miranda, you're not thinking clearly. Lily has been manipulating you, playing on your emotions. She's jealous of our marriage, of the life we've built. This is her way of trying to destroy it." But Miranda had seen too much evidence to be swayed by James's manipulation tactics. She'd found the hotel receipts, the payments to a private investigator who'd been following Lily, the emails between James and Dr. Reeves discussing how to handle Lily's behavioral issues. Most damning of all, she'd found the recordings James had made himself, videos of his assaults on Lily that he'd apparently kept as insurance, as proof of her willing participation should she ever try to expose him. I found your insurance policy, James. The videos you made of yourself raping my sister. Did you really think she was participating willingly, or were you just planning to use those to destroy her credibility if she ever tried to speak up? James's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the cold, calculating predator that Miranda realized had always been lurking beneath the surface of the man she'd married. You stupid bitch, you have no idea what you're dealing with. Lily is nothing, a nobody who was lucky I even bothered with her. And you're about to throw away everything we've built for some delusional fantasy about protecting your worthless sister. Everything we've built was a lie, James. Our marriage, your career, your reputation, all of it was built on you being someone you never were. And what exactly do you think you're going to do with this information? Take it to the police? Destroy my career? Ruin both our lives? Miranda had been asking herself the same questions for the past week, ever since she'd discovered the truth about what James had been doing to Lily. She'd agonized over the decision, knowing that exposing James would mean destroying everything she'd worked for, everything she'd believed in. Miranda Chen had built her own successful career as an environmental lawyer, had been planning to run for district attorney in the next election cycle. She'd been Colorado's rising star in Democratic politics, the perfect complement to James's conservative appeal, the power couple that could bridge political divides and represent a new generation of leadership. Exposing James would mean the end of all of that. It would mean scandal, media scrutiny, the destruction of her own political ambitions. Worse, it would mean admitting that she'd been living with a monster for 8 years without recognizing what he was. I've already been to the police, James. I've already turned over everything, the photos, the videos, the hotel receipts, the therapy records. Detective Sarah Martinez from the Denver PD has been building a case against you for the past week. You're lying. If you'd really gone to the police, I would have been arrested by now. They wanted to give you the chance to confess, to make this easier on everyone. Detective Martinez thought maybe if you understood that we had overwhelming evidence, you might be willing to plead guilty and spare Lily the trauma of a trial. James laughed, a sound that sent chills down Miranda's spine. You really think anyone is going to believe a troubled teenage immigrant over a sitting state senator? You think a jury is going to convict me based on some photos that could have been staged? Some videos that could have been manipulated? I think a jury is going to convict you based on the testimony of multiple victims, James. Lily isn't the only one. Miranda had spent the past week working with Detective Martinez to identify other potential victims, and what they'd discovered had made her realize that James's abuse of Lily was part of a much larger pattern. There's Sarah Kim, the intern, from your office 2 years ago. She filed a complaint about sexual harassment, but it was buried by your chief of staff. There's Maria Santos, the housekeeper who worked for us until last year. She quit after you assaulted her in our bedroom while I was out of town. And there's Jennifer Walsh, the court reporter who's been afraid to come forward because you threatened to have her fired. Those are all lies, desperate attempts by bitter women to destroy a successful man. No one will believe them. Maybe, not individually, but together with Lily's evidence, with the pattern of behavior that shows you've been a predator for years, I think they will. Miranda told James about the other evidence she'd found, the payments to women who'd agreed to keep quiet about his behavior, the private investigator reports on potential victims, the carefully maintained files of compromising information. He'd used to silence anyone who threatened to expose him. You've been running a systematic campaign of sexual assault and blackmail for years, James. You've been using your position, your resources, your connections to prey on vulnerable women, and then destroy them if they tried to fight back. And you've been benefiting from it the entire time. Your career, your lifestyle, your political connections, all of it was built on the foundation of what I accomplished. You think you can just walk away from that without any consequences? I think I can't live with myself if I don't walk away from it. I think I can't look at myself in the mirror knowing that I helped create the platform you used to hurt all these women. Miranda had already begun the process of dismantling their shared life. She'd moved money from their joint accounts into a separate fund for Lily's therapy and legal expenses. She'd contacted a divorce attorney and begun the process of separating their assets. Most importantly, she'd resigned from her position at the law firm and withdrawn from the district attorney race. You're really going to throw away everything for these people? For Lily, for some housekeeper, for women who were probably willing participants in whatever happened. I'm going to throw away everything to stop you from hurting anyone else. I'm going to throw away everything because I should have seen what you were years ago, and I didn't. Miranda's voice broke as she thought about all the signs she'd missed, all the times she'd dismissed other women's concerns about James's behavior, all the ways she'd been complicit in his crimes through her willful blindness. I enabled you, James. I gave you credibility, respectability, access to victims. I helped create the image of the perfect husband and public servant that you used to manipulate people into trusting you. And now you're going to destroy both of us for some misguided sense of guilt? Miranda, think about what you're doing. Think about what you're giving up. I'm giving up a life built on lies and violence. I'm giving up a marriage to a man who's been raping teenage girls. I'm giving up a career that was funded by blackmail and extortion. What exactly am I supposed to regret about that? The conversation was interrupted by the sound of car doors slamming in their driveway. Through the kitchen window, Miranda could see Detective Martinez and 2 other officers approaching the house. They're here to arrest you, James. Lily's testimony, combined with the evidence I provided, was enough for a warrant. James looked out the window, his face cycling through emotions as he realized his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. This isn't over, Miranda. Even if they arrest me, even if they charge me, I have resources, connections, lawyers. I'll fight this, and I'll make sure you regret betraying me. I already regret it, Miranda said quietly. I regret that it took me so long to see what you were. I regret all the women you hurt while I was playing the perfect political wife. I regret that Lily had to suffer for months while I was too blind to protect her. The doorbell rang, followed by Detective Martinez's voice calling out, "Denver Police, we have a warrant for the arrest of James Morrison." As James was led away in handcuffs, Miranda felt a mixture of relief and devastation. She'd done the right thing, but it had cost her everything she'd thought she wanted from life. The media coverage was immediate and brutal. "Political power couple destroyed by sex scandal," read the Denver Post headline. "Rising star's career ends in disgrace," proclaimed the Colorado Springs Gazette. But Miranda was surprised by how many people reached out to support her decision. Her law school classmates, professional colleagues, even political opponents who respected her courage in choosing justice over self-preservation. "I know this couldn't have been easy," Detective Martinez told her after James's arrest. "But you should know that your decision to come forward has probably prevented him from hurting other women. Men like James don't stop. They just get better at hiding their crimes." Has Lily given her statement? She's scheduled to meet with the prosecutor tomorrow. She's scared, but she's also relieved that someone finally believes her. She wanted me to tell you that she's grateful for what you did, that she knows how much you sacrificed to protect her. Miranda had barely spoken to Lily since discovering the truth, not because she blamed her sister, but because she was overwhelmed by guilt about her failure to protect her. When Lily finally came home from staying with friends, the 2 sisters sat in the living room where so much of the abuse had occurred and tried to find a way forward. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was scared that you wouldn't believe me, that you'd choose him over me." "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," Miranda replied. "I'm sorry I brought you into this house, into this situation. I'm sorry I was so focused on my own life that I missed what was happening to you. You couldn't have known. He was very careful, very good at making sure no one would believe me if I tried to tell. But I should have seen the signs. I should have paid more attention to how you were acting, how you were changing. I should have protected you." Lily was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You did protect me. Maybe not at first, but when it mattered most, you chose to protect me even though it cost you everything." "I didn't lose everything, Lily. I lost things that were built on lies and violence. What I gained was the chance to finally do the right thing." The trial took place 6 months later, drawing national attention as a case that highlighted the intersection of political power and sexual abuse. James's legal team tried every possible defense, attacking the credibility of the victims, claiming the evidence was fabricated, arguing that the relationships had been consensual. But the evidence was overwhelming. Lily's testimony was powerful and credible, corroborated by physical evidence and James's own recordings. The other victims came forward to describe similar patterns of abuse, and the financial records showed a clear pattern of payments to silence accusers. Miranda testified about her discovery of the crimes and her decision to come forward, despite the personal cost. She described finding the evidence, confronting James, and choosing to prioritize her sister's safety over her own career. "I married a man I thought was dedicated to public service and justice," she told the court. "I discovered I was living with a predator who was using his position to systematically abuse vulnerable women. Once I knew the truth, I had a choice: protect my career and lifestyle, or protect the women he was hurting. For me, it wasn't really a choice at all." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. James was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. As Miranda left the courthouse after the sentencing, she was surrounded by reporters asking for her reaction to the verdict. "Justice was served today," she said simply. "But I want people to understand that this case isn't really about one man's crimes. It's about the systems that enable predators, the way we often choose to protect institutions and reputations over victims. Do you regret your decision to come forward, given what it cost you personally? I regret that it took me so long to see the truth. I regret that women were hurt while I was living in willful blindness. But do I regret choosing justice over self-preservation? Never. What's next for you?" "I'm going back to school to get a degree in social work. I want to work with survivors of sexual abuse, to help them navigate the legal system and find their voices. I want to spend the rest of my career doing something that actually matters." A year after James's conviction, Miranda was working as a victim advocate while completing her master's degree in social work. She'd lost her political ambitions, her marriage, and her prestigious legal career, but she'd found something more valuable: a sense of purpose and integrity that had been missing from her life for years. Lily had thrived in the aftermath of the trial, receiving counseling and support that helped her process the trauma she'd experienced. She'd been accepted to several colleges and was planning to study criminal justice, inspired by the courage of the women who'd testified against James. "I want to help other victims find their voices," Lily told Miranda during one of their weekly dinners. "I want to be the kind of advocate for them that you were for me. You were so brave to come forward, to testify against him. I don't know if I could have done that at your age. I was only brave because I knew you would support me. I was only brave because you showed me that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than protecting yourself." Miranda thought about her old life often: the political career she'd abandoned, the marriage she'd destroyed, the comfortable illusions she'd shattered. She'd been called a traitor by James's supporters, people who believed she'd betrayed her husband for political gain or personal revenge. But she knew the truth. She hadn't betrayed James. She'd simply finally seen him clearly and chosen to protect the women he was hurting. The real betrayal would have been continuing to live a lie, continuing to provide cover for a predator, continuing to prioritize her own comfort over other people's safety. "Everyone called me a traitor," Miranda told her therapist during one of their sessions. "They said I destroyed my own marriage, betrayed my husband, ruined our family for selfish reasons. What do you think about that?" "I think they're right that I destroyed my marriage, but they're wrong about why. I didn't destroy it for selfish reasons. I destroyed it because it was built on a foundation of lies and violence. I destroyed it to protect my sister and the other women James was hurting. And how do you feel about that decision now? Miranda looked out the window of the therapist's office, watching people walk by on the street below. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, most of them probably never having to make the kind of impossible choice she'd faced. I feel like I finally became the person I always thought I was, she said. For years, I told myself I was someone who stood up for justice, who protected the vulnerable, who did the right thing even when it was difficult. But when it really mattered, when I had to choose between my own comfort and other people's safety, I almost chose wrong. But you didn't choose wrong. No, I didn't. And that's something I can live with, even if it cost me everything else. As Miranda left the therapy session and walked back to her small apartment, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this point. She'd lost a marriage, a career, a lifestyle, and a future she'd spent years building. But she'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that when it truly mattered, she'd chosen courage over comfort, justice over convenience, truth over the comfortable lies that had defined her old life. People had called her a traitor, and in a way they were right. She had betrayed the world she'd been part of, the system that had rewarded her silence and complicity. But what they didn't understand, what she hadn't understood herself until it was too late, was that sometimes betrayal is the most moral choice available, and sometimes destroying something is the only way to save what really matters. James had been hurting Lily and other women for years, but nobody had seen it because they'd been too invested in the comfortable fiction of who he appeared to be. Miranda had been the one person positioned to see the truth and act on it, and, in the end, that responsibility had been more important than any career or marriage or reputation. She'd been called a traitor for destroying her own life to save her sister. But she knew the truth. She'd finally become the person she'd always claimed to be, and that was worth more than anything she'd lost.